People I know whose opinion I value. And there's also a few people that do what I do whose opinion I value. So once it gets to the point, I think I'm ready for them to hear it.
In the shadowy corners of alternative rock stood a figure whose melancholy could move mountains and whose musical vision helped define a generation. Robert Smith, the lipstick-wearing mastermind behind The Cure's darkly beautiful soundscapes.
I think musically, a lot of what I think would have gone into The Cure, I put into the Banshees, which left...
Wasn't just a revolutionary musician who transformed post-punk into gothic poetry. He was also a man who held deep contempt for artists he viewed as betraying music's authentic spirit. Welcome to another episode of Offstage Tales, where today we're diving into the brooding world of Robert Smith and the 6 musicians that reportedly earned his musical scorn. The crawly goth prince behind classics like Just Like Heaven and Close to Me was known for his uncompromising artistic integrity that apparently clashed with several mainstream acts. Music should come from pain, not from marketing meetings, Smith once told NME in 1989. Too many people have forgotten that difference. And for Smith, quite a few big names had crossed that line into unforgivable territory. From icy backstage encounters to cutting remarks in interviews, Smith's relationships with these musicians reveal not just personal tensions, but deeper conflicts about authenticity versus commercialization in the music industry. Some of these feuds simmered in alternative rock circles, others exploded into public view, but all of them shaped the landscape of 1980s and 1990s music. So apply your black eyeliner and prepare for some dark revelations as we count down the 6 musicians that made the Gothic Prince himself see red instead of black. 6. Morrissey. Coming in at number 6 on our countdown is a rivalry that shocked the alternative music world, Morrissey.
So please, 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 let me...
Yes, the Smiths' frontman and fellow champion of melancholy reportedly earned Robert Smith's contempt in what became one of indie rock's most bitter feuds.
You say that, it's commercial with a capital C, but when we did it, there was a lot of debate as it would have been.
The tension reportedly began in the mid-1980s when both artists were competing for the crown of alternative rock's most tortured soul. According to former NME journalist Simon Reynolds, Smith once watched Morrissey perform and told his bandmates, "He's not sad, he's just performing sadness for people who've never felt real pain." What bothered Smith wasn't Morrissey's lyrical content, but his theatrical approach to misery. While Smith channeled genuine emotional darkness through his music, Morrissey was finding massive critical acclaim with what Smith reportedly called calculated victimhood and professional suffering. There are people who live in darkness, and there are people who just visit it for applause, Smith told Sounds magazine in 1987, without naming names. But insiders claimed the barb was aimed directly at Morrissey's dramatic persona. The rivalry intensified when music critics began comparing their approaches to melancholy. At a 1988 industry gathering, witnesses claim Smith deliberately avoided Morrissey entirely, later telling associates, "I don't need to compete with someone who treats depression like a costume." Morrissey seemed aware of Smith's disdain, later making cryptic references to fake goths in interviews. But for Smith, Morrissey represented everything wrong with alternative rock's commercialization, turning authentic emotional pain into marketable misery, performance over genuine feeling, and indie credibility built on manufactured authenticity. 5. Duran Duran. At number 5, we encounter a clash that defined the battle between underground credibility and mainstream success, Duran Duran. Robert Smith's disdain for the Birmingham new wave superstars wasn't just about their music, it was about what they represented in the rapidly commercializing world of 1980s alternative rock. The feud reportedly began during the early MTV era, when both bands were navigating the transition from underground darlings to video stars. According to former Cure bassist Simon Gallup, Smith once watched a Duran Duran video and muttered, "They've turned music into a fashion show. Where's the soul in any of this?"
And I thought, well, I'll do it until we can find someone, because I didn't want to not play. I just thought, unless we start playing, we've got to play to people. So.
What infuriated Smith wasn't just their polished image, but their approach to artistry. While Smith was crafting deeply personal songs about love, loss, and existential dread, Duran Duran was achieving massive success with what Smith reportedly called empty glamour for people who confuse style with substance. Some bands make music, others make lifestyle accessories, Smith told Melody Maker in 1984, in what many interpreted as a direct shot at Duran Duran's fashion-forward aesthetic. The rivalry deepened when both bands were competing for airtime on the newly launched MTV. At a 1983 industry party, witnesses claim Smith refused to be photographed with Simon Le Bon, later telling his manager, "I won't be used as a prop in their marketing campaign." Le Bon seemed genuinely confused by Smith's hostility, later calling The Cure brilliantly moody in interviews. But for Smith, Duran Duran represented everything he despised about the music industry's evolution, prioritizing image over emotion, commerce over creativity, and surface glamour over authentic artistic expression. 4. Billy Idol. At number 4, we dive into a betrayal that cuts straight to the heart of punk rock's soul. Billy Idol.
Eyes without a face, got no human grace.
Smith's contempt for the bleach-blonde rebel wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal, rooted in what he saw as the ultimate sellout of everything punk originally stood for. The tension reportedly began in the late 1970s London punk scene, where both artists were emerging from the underground. According to former Generation X drummer Mark Laff, Smith once watched Idol perform and told fellow musicians, "He's turned rebellion into a cartoon. Punk was supposed to mean something."
And I find that really disappointing, that the media is controlled by the same people, like the print media and the
What bothered Smith wasn't just Idol's commercial success, but his transformation of punk's raw authenticity into what Smith viewed as manufactured rebellion. While Smith maintained punk's outsider spirit through The Cure's uncompromising sound, Idol was finding MTV stardom with what Smith reportedly called punk for people who shop at the mall. "Real punk comes from desperation, not from a marketing team," Smith told Zigzag magazine in 1982, in what insiders recognized as a clear reference to Idol's carefully crafted bad boy image. The rivalry reached its peak when Idol's Rebel Yell dominated MTV rotation. At a 1984 London club, witnesses claim Smith walked out when Idol's video came on, later telling friends, "I can't watch punk's corpse being paraded around like this." Idol seemed oblivious to Smith's disgust, later praising The Cure's innovation in interviews. But for Smith, Billy Idol represented the death of punk's authentic spirit, turning what should be raw and dangerous into something safe and sellable, betraying everything the movement originally fought against. 3rd, Madonna. Number 3 brings us to perhaps Smith's most ideologically driven rivalry, Madonna. The conflict between The Cure's frontman and the Queen of Pop wasn't about musical style. It was about the very essence of what it meant to be an artist in the age of calculated stardom. The feud reportedly began in the mid-1980s when both artists were conquering MTV, but through completely different approaches. According to former Cure keyboardist Lol Tolhurst, Smith once watched Madonna's Material Girl video and told his bandmates, "She's everything that's wrong with music, pure ambition dressed up as art." What disgusted Smith wasn't Madonna's pop sensibilities, but her approach to creativity. While Smith poured his genuine emotions into deeply personal songs, Madonna was achieving global domination with what Smith reportedly called focus-grouped feelings and manufactured vulnerability designed by committee. "Art should be about truth, not about becoming famous," Smith told The Face magazine in 1986, in what many interpreted as a direct critique of Madonna's relentless self-promotion. The rivalry intensified when both artists were being compared as visual innovators. At a 1987 Industry Awards ceremony, witnesses claim Smith actively avoided Madonna's table, later telling associates, "I don't associate with people who treat their soul like a brand." Madonna seemed unaware of Smith's contempt, later calling alternative rock interesting in interviews. But for Smith, Madonna represented everything he fought against in the music industry. turning authentic artistic expression into calculated career moves, depth sacrificed for commercial appeal, and genuine emotion replaced by market-tested sentiment. 2. George Michael. At number 2, we encounter Smith's most emotionally charged hatred, George Michael.
Told me marriage was all give and take. When you show me you can take, you got some giving.
This wasn't just about different musical approaches. It was about the commodification of human heartbreak and the transformation of genuine pain into radio-friendly products. The tension reportedly began during the Wham! Era, but intensified dramatically with Michael's solo career. According to music journalist John Savage, Smith once listened to Careless Whisper and told him, "He's taken real heartbreak and turned it into elevator music. It's obscene." What enraged Smith wasn't Michael's vocal ability, but his sanitization of emotional pain. While Smith channeled his genuine romantic struggles into raw, honest songs,
Most people it wasn't a good thing, you know. I mean, I didn't think it was a good thing because people would die. I was aware of it.
Michael was finding massive success with what Smith reportedly called heartbreak for people who've never had their hearts broken. "Love songs should leave scars, not make you feel comfortable," Smith told Select magazine in 1990, in what insiders recognized as a devastating critique of Michael's polished romanticism. The rivalry reached its most bitter point when both artists were dealing with public relationship struggles. At a 1991 industry function, witnesses claimed Smith refused to acknowledge Michael's presence, later telling his manager, "I won't shake hands with someone who prostitutes real emotion." Michael seemed genuinely hurt by Smith's coldness, later expressing admiration for the Cure's authenticity in interviews. But for Smith, George Michael represented the ultimate betrayal of artistic integrity, taking the most sacred human emotions and processing them into something safe, marketable, and ultimately hollow. 1. Bono. And finally, at number 1, we reach the most shocking revelation of all, Bono. Yes, U2's messianic frontman reportedly earned Robert Smith's ultimate contempt in what became alternative rock's most philosophically bitter rivalry. The feud reportedly began in the early 1980s when both bands were emerging from post-punk origins, but their paths couldn't have been more different. According to former Island Records executive Chris Blackwell, Smith once watched U2 perform and afterwards told him, he thinks he's saving the world, but he's just another rock star with a god complex. What infuriated Smith wasn't U2's music, but Bono's messianic persona. While Smith approached his art with humility and genuine vulnerability, Bono was achieving massive success with what Smith reportedly called stadium-sized self-importance and activism as performance art. The rivalry reached nuclear levels when both bands were competing for critical acclaim and commercial success. At a 1987 festival, witnesses claim Smith confronted Bono directly, saying, "Real artists don't need to tell people they're saving them. They just make music that might help." Music journalist David Fricke reported that Smith later told him, "The moment you start believing you're a prophet, you stop being an artist." He crossed that line years ago. The final insult came when Bono began lecturing audiences about world issues during concerts. Former Cure drummer Boris Williams claimed Smith kept newspaper clippings about Bono's speeches, growing increasingly disgusted with what he saw as performative righteousness. Bono seemed genuinely puzzled by Smith's hostility, later calling The Cure beautifully dark in interviews. But for Smith, Bono represented everything wrong with rock stardom's evolution, turning humble artistry into grandiose self-importance, authentic connection into manufactured salvation, and genuine emotion into calculated inspiration. So there you have it. Even Gothic princes have their enemies. Was Robert Smith defending artistic integrity, or just bitter about others' success? Which feud shocked you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if this blew your mind, and subscribe for more alternative rock secrets.